Go ahead and bring us up, Nancy, if you would, please. Okay, this is a meeting to discuss what's going on out at the jail after our water problems. Let's go ahead and introduce everybody. I'm Commissioner Moser.
Commissioner Huff.
Nancy Allen, Deputy Clerk.
Ryan Belknap, HR Director and Risk Management.
I'm Seth McClure with Sedgwick, the insurance adjuster working with Kim over at Crimp.
Levi Waldron, the maintenance guy at the Sheriff's Office. Tony Manu, Bannock County Sheriff.
Alex Hamilton, Chief Deputy Sheriff's Office.
Michonne Bykrim.
Dan Kendall, Facilities Manager.
Paul Jensen, Planning Director, Bannock County.
Brian Trammell with the Prosecutor's Office.
Okay, and for your information, this meeting is a public meeting. It is being aired, so let's go ahead and begin. Roles and responsibilities, or what people feel like they are, and where we're at, and where the project is.
I could start talking about, I was writing a couple of the players on the board, and I could talk a little bit about this, and if anybody wants to step in, we can. I won't be the best to speak at where the project's at right now, but I can talk about the roles and responsibilities if you'd like.
Okay.
Okay, so how I picture it in my mind, and I'm kind of a visual person, that's why I wrote it on here, is we've got kind of three main groups. We've got ICRIM as our insurance carrier, and Kim's here representing them. And ICRIM has contracted with Sedgwick and MKA as kind of to help monitor the project, to provide consultation, and just kind of keep things going smoothly on their end. And then we've got STAR, and you met Kelly, who's kind of been our main contact over there. And they're really the people in charge of the project. They're supposed to be developing assessments and plans and of what the problem is and how to fix it, and giving us options for solutions, and then actually operationally executing those plans, right? So they're kind of the ones that are supposed to be doing the work for us. And then for the county, you know who everyone in the county is. Levi and I, and have been up to this point pretty close. Hal started, you know, with the initial emergency, but has tried to step away. In a very clean picture, this is kind of how I imagine it. The lanes should work is, so there's an issue. The county, if it's, we're asking STAR to identify problem and fix it, or give us options for how to fix it. They go to ICRIMP if it's underneath the policy and it's not affecting other infrastructure. I think on the county end, we just say, yeah, go ahead, is what I kind of had in my mind. But if it's going to affect other infrastructure or other resources, then we need to make sure we're looped in to help provide approval and go through the approval chain. Anyway, that's how I have it in my head. Does anybody else have it differently?
Let me speak to an item of clarity that in your statement, and this is not meant as an attack, but
Yeah.
you identified the problem that is the frustration for STAR. Your comment was it's their responsibility to identify the problem and provide a solution. That's not correct. They're there to build whatever the solution is that's given based upon their interpretation that MKA was going to be feeding them, representing ICRIMP, who's the insurer. And therein lies the inherent breakdown in communication. Bottom line. That's why we're here.
Yep, I think you nailed it on the head.
And so real
That's where
quickly,
the breakdown is.
I was under the impression, when I first started, having been contacted by the sheriff to make sure that first that the building was safe, and then once ICRIMP came in, all of the people that I had contacted, we all stepped away because we were led to believe that ICRIMP would be working with MKA Star would be helping them to identify any additional potential problems. They would come up with the engineering and feed that information back to Star for the correction. They could gather the prices. ICRIMP could verify that it was within the policy and the costs, et cetera, and guidelines and parameters that they understood from market costs. And then Star would go take care of the work. The problem is according to Star, they're not receiving any information on what is, like for instance, are we replacing a boiler like for like? If we are, do we get it replaced now? Do we get it ordered? When do we get it ordered? Who's providing them that information? Their job is to install. Their job is not to design. If we need to get a designer involved outside of MKA, ICRIMP needs to inform the county that's what we need to do, because that might be a critical player that's not in place right now.
See, and I think that's where the breakdown is, right? And
Does that make sense, Seth?
Yeah, I kind of want to provide a little bit of correction to this whole scenario here, because from the very, very get-go, Star has been directed. We've done initially weekly teleconferences, probably the first month or two, I think, after this had all occurred, pretty regularly on here. And so Star has been given some pretty detailed instructions about, what they're needing to do. And most of that comprised the emergency or temporary repair type stuff that was going on, just like you're explaining.
Right.
And so we're working with them through there. And so MKA's role and responsibility in here has been kind of to monitor that situation, to make sure that we're doing what we're doing so that things don't drift over into an area where they don't need to have happen. But we've had discussions about replacing like for like multiple times in those teleconferences, as well as requests for a lot of information. We actually have generated several pieces of written documentation requesting what is needed from Star to be able to document or support what is being done and or is planned to be done. So we've requested bids for review. We've requested information in regards to their schedule of repairs and or timelines and things of that nature. And I think a lot of, at least several of us in here have been a part of those teleconferences. So I'm kind of interested or curious as to who at Star is providing you with these comments, because there's...
So that conversation, Seth, was held with the commission
Last week?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks
ago,
ago,
yeah.
here in this meeting, from Kelly and from Brad. Brad is the operations manager of this division of Star, and
Okay.
Kelly, of course, is our quote-unquote project manager representing Star.
Yeah, I'll just be straight up honest with you. I'm not sure where that breakdown happened on Star's part, because I know from sitting in the meetings with Levi and Alex here, we've told them probably ad nauseum that we're going to have to see and get these costs at least a review for bids and stuff like that. So it was a little bit of surprise to find out that they're saying some of the stuff that they are. Not to be confrontational or anything, I just want you guys to be aware of what has transpired on our side. I don't know anybody else who's been in those meetings. We've got most of all the meeting minutes to go back on if we would need to in that regard. Point being here though is that we've got to figure out where we go from here, and based upon what Ryan has outlined up here, MK is there for review processes to make sure that the costs are within reason, within control and everything, and to help assess and kind of push the project as it needs to go. But at the end of the day, Star's going to have to act as a general contractor. They're going to have to give their own design, engineers, architects, plans, anything like that as a general contractor. And I'm not sure where the breakdown happened with Star on the MKA side, because we've been waiting for Star for a lot of stuff, not the opposite way around. So I don't know if that helps or...
That isn't what was actually said the other day. It didn't come out that way to me. But we don't have general contractors, what it sounds like to me. And whose responsibility is it to get the general contractor?
That would be the county as far as I know.
But we do have a
Understood.
general contractor commissioner in the form of Star. I mean, they are
But,
who it
but
is.
they didn't really recognize that.
I don't think it was ever communicated that it was their responsibility to hire design consultants. That's typically in the
Yeah.
process, that's
Well-
typically not how that goes.
And if that needs to happen, they need to have a contract either with iCrimp or with the county. We had one with them, but it ended the fiscal year. So they've been operating without a contract. So sounds to me like there's a lot of loopholes that we've kind of missed some areas of who has responsibilities. So this flow chart needs to say who has what responsibilities and let them do their job.
And I think a couple of good points to keep in mind too is that breaking down kind of the roles and responsibilities even further is that when we initially had this flood and all of this heaving and just chaos over there, there's I guess you'd say an emergency response that STAR has provided, and we work with them back and forth on that one. So separating that from the actual repair and or replacement portion of this kind of into two parts on here. So we're working with them on an emergency temporary basis over here to get things back up and running so that these guys can breathe a little bit easier over at the detention center there. But then now we're at the point to where it's like, okay, now that we have patched everything up as best as we can, how do we fix it and how do we get to that? And those conversations have been happening probably, the past 3 months maybe, since about the end of October, I think, and that's where a lot of the requests for information has come. So at the end of the day, and again, I'm not saying this to be confrontational whatsoever at all, but if STAR is that contractor that the county wants to work with on it, they need to act like a general contractor. And at this point, we would have already expected to had a bid for the entire project as well as all the supporting documentation for subcontractors, and we haven't had that, and we've requested that multiple times. So I
This is
don't
part of
know.
the reason I wanted STAR here, because we're talking about them and their parts of it, and they're not here to answer and have their feelings involved with this. So,
Well, rather than look backwards, if we look forwards, I'm gonna look to Dan as our building guy and say, Dan, if you were to head up this project, probably not if, but as you head up this project, what process do you see we need to put in place so we can get this thing taken care of?
Like we say, we've got to get a design in their hands, and if that's their responsibility to come up with it, we can start there.
But have we had that conversation with them so they know that, or?
We've had that multiple times.
Can I just
Yeah.
interject one
Oh,
little
sorry.
thing? Two days before the previous meeting where it was addressed that this was a confusion, we sat in a meeting, and you can correct me on this, Seth, because you take pretty detailed minutes, but it was spelled out in detail whose role it was to come up with plan and design, and so I don't know why that's still a confusion, but yes, they have done their part to try to communicate that from what I see sitting in every one of those meetings, so I'm just gonna.
let's get a copy of those minutes, and we'll get them to Dan, and he'll get a hold of Brad, and this has got to move forward quicker than what it has been doing. That's just my opinion.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
As far as the temporary contract that you had with STAR, I wasn't aware that they weren't hired for this, because the county hires, you get a contract for the whole project. So during all of this, we have had, I can't even tell you how many meetings, and I've never been made aware that this was not STAR's project. Up until Kelly said he is not the project manager, and that was 2 weeks ago, and we all just questioned that. There's no project manager. I think that that's where it needs to start.
Well, I think it all started with Levi was like, I don't mind helping this, but I'm not the project manager here, and
Right.
and he didn't want that responsibility, so that's when we were kind of like, well, we need to figure out, move forward with who that person is.
From the county side, it looks like we've had too many points of contact that have muddied up the waters. No, again, not pointing fingers, but that's just the county's fault. And that's why I say at this point in time, we point the finger at Dan and say, you are it. All points of contact through the county go through Dan, so we have that unified voice. Mr. Chair, do you agree with that?
Yes.
for whatever it's worth too, we've requested a lot of documentation, and we've got, I think our last meeting, it was $81,000 worth of documentation for something that, on both the temporary work that's been done out there, plus the, I guess you'd say the initial demolition stuff. We would expect it to be in probably $200,000-300,000 range, if not more. So we haven't had a lot of that information provided as well. So there's been, I want to say that little bit of breakdown, and you're right, STAR's not here to defend themselves whatsoever, but for me, personally, in handling these types of situations, it's been really frustrating because I hear from the MKA guys and I keep going back to them and saying, hey, do we have anything? What's going on? Has anything been provided? And they're not, and they continue to have to follow up. And having done claims of this magnitude and size before, I can see where that I don't want to say stop gate is that's causing the backup to occur on here. Now, with that being the case, looking forward, like you're saying, the things that are going to be really helpful to do is to probably establish that contract or whatever with the county, with STAR, that you're going to do so that they can provide a bid, so that they can do the design. And you got to remember too, some of this has been an exploratory type nature too of, hey, we don't know what's going on. I think we did our last GPR scans probably about a month ago, if I remember right. Still trying to look to see how the soils have moved and shifted, because we initially had to get that area opened up and dried out to be able to see down in there. We've also added here recently, I think the tank underground that they had said that had moved. So it's been a kind of an ever-evolving thing as well. So I'm not trying to defend STAR or throw them under the bus in whatever way, but there has been a development process to this whole thing as well. It's I think probably at the point where everybody is kind of like, okay, we either need to figure out what's going on so we can move forward with the repairs and get that done. And one of the big things that we've brought up many times is the lead times on some of this replacement equipment, because there are long lead times on a lot of the boiler equipment and stuff like that is probably going to affect when the project is completed and get them back online. And so we have to take into account that the operations are still going on as well. So that's been a concern, and we've really pushed that. I think everybody who's in that meeting probably is tired of hearing me ask for it and say, you know, hey, we need the repair schedule, we need to see what's going on, what's happening, and what the breakdown is. So moving forward, establishing that contract, getting the bid from STAR for what it is that they have, for what we know right now, and that could change. There could be change orders that happen within that actual contract that get added to as we go along and find additional information as well. So that's expected in this particular situation, but those two things right there is establishing, you know, that they are the general contractor and having that contract in place and getting the requested information. That's going to help our side and then MK side out incredibly so we can move forward. I know Kim is wanting to pay as much as we possibly can.
You got your checkbook out?
I absolutely is ready.
Well, that brings up another deal, and we'd heard today in one of our meetings that you don't want to pay small bills.
No, it's not that I don't want to pay small bills, it's that when I get a receipt from Home Depot, I don't have, that's on an account, and so I can reimburse on small bills, monthly, quarterly, weekly, however you want to do it. But I can pay contractors, I pay, you know, if you want me to pay an $80 bill to Home Depot, I can, but it all has to go through a report.
Okay.
And so that $80 bill might be on this other schedule. And so to me, I can keep the smaller invoices, receipts, the items that the county has to pick up, and I can reimburse because I'm imagining that that's not going to affect the county's budget. The larger one, you know, I mean, it's what we get, a couple $1 million project, that's going to affect your budget. I absolutely am going to pay those directly.
Yeah, well, in the Home Depot, they did close our account because it didn't get paid, and that's why I want everything to go through Dan now.
Right, absolutely.
And so that it's logged, everybody knows
Yes.
one person.
And we've been keeping a track or monitoring on that, and the deductible that's in play, we aren't even close to
They paid their deductible.
On the
We
one.
paid that a long time
Yeah,
ago.
did,
on the
okay.
Oh, yeah.
very first, yeah, on the emergency.
So I
but-
retract what I
Yeah,
said.
yeah.
Yeah,
Apparently I,
That was like the first bill.
it was, yeah.
okay.
So, just not to keep dragging this on and pointing fingers at everybody, from this point forward, Dan will be the lead. And let's make sure that we've talked to Star, we know if they're gonna be the general contractor. We'll talk with legal, let's get our contract set up so that everybody knows roles and responsibilities. And I just wanna say here that I'm happy with the people that have been involved. And Levi, I'm gonna just call you out. You've worked your butt off. And you've been there and everything else. And I'm not taking anything away from you by putting Dan over this project. But the commission haven't been involved with it. We've been off to the side here and we had a phone call and this was discussed. I'd like a commissioner to be in them phone calls so that when we get a complaint from one group or the other, we can say, this is what's there. We've been there, we know. But I know that you feel like you've been thrown under the bus, and I apologize for that. But it's his home. And he has a lot of interest in it and wants it done right. Well, we all want it done right. But we need to move forward and get these questions that are out there answered. And so now our resource is going to be through Dan. And we'll, if any of you have concerns, get a hold of our office. Let us be able to move things forward. We're the only ones that can sign the bills. We're the only ones that can make some of these decisions. And if we're off the sideline, we can't help you.
I just want to throw it out there and just, I'm already starting this with questions, so Dan's going to be the point man. Explain how that's going to work with my role on site every day. Like, how is that going to work when, I just want some clarification so I know how to direct things.
If you have questions, if it's the contractors or anybody else, it'll be through Dan. You'll talk with Dan or tell him your concerns and your problems, along with everybody else.
The reason we're doing this, Levi, is again, like Ernie said, and I commend you for what you've done, so this is no slap or anything to you. You have enough stuff on your plate out there just keeping the lights on that we want to turn some of this administrative stuff over to Dan to ease your burden on that. And Dan, we've been working on some leadership stuff, and so this is an opportunity for you to work with Dan in that leadership role to say, okay, what can I do? What can you do? How can we get this going forward? So I anticipate Dan to be able to answer that question when you and he meet together.
I can only offer the suggestion that if you're having Levi step back and Dan take in that more of the role, let's make sure Star understands that. Because that's gonna help, I wanna say, direct more of the questions and stuff to where they need to go.
Correct.
Because I have personally seen and witnessed, I know what you're saying, he has went above and beyond and probably even done a lot more than I would have expected. And it's frustrating for me, having been on this side, on the insurance side anyway, watching him deal in a certain respect with the same frustrations that we're having to. I never like to see that, but you know, it is the situation that we're in. So for what it's worth, I think if Star is made aware that transition is happening, that would be
Very
great.
much so. It'll happen within a day.
Going back to
All I can
those,
say is there's got to be a lot of communication. There's got to be a lot of communication because, again, it is my home, it's my backyard, and I need to be, I feel that I need to be heavily involved in the decisions going forward, whether it's that consulting with Dan or whatever, I need to be involved because it affects my day-to-day going forward once the project is closed and we
Right.
cut the ribbon on it. So
I guarantee you, if you're consulting with Dan, it's gonna be done right.
And that is
say,
the
would-
expectation, that you are communicating with him. But don't forget, even though it's your home, it's the county facility. And so I expect that communication to happen both ways, up and down.
Braden?
I was gonna say, backtracking to the little bills, would it be appropriate for Teresa and Christie to work with you on those
Well,
directly?
that was my request is that if you do have project bills, that it comes through. So that way, because we know if it's done or not, and it's standard that gets forward on.
And they could add up pretty quick,
Correct.
so I didn't know if that would be
And
appropriate.
And it's really appropriate because we'll know which ones actually tie into that project.
Mhm.
And that we're not just sending
Same,
random
yeah.
bills to you.
That would be
Right.
perfect.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah. Yeah, that would be great. And if you guys want it reimbursed on a monthly, if you want to
Right.
do from month, first to the 30th
Right.
or whatever,
Okay.
I can cut a check out monthly. I just want to make sure that everything's accounted for and
Correct.
together. So I think monthly would be
And
great,
and
actually.
I know some of the billing has been kind of
Yeah.
everywhere.
Well, and I'll just tell you, you can okay it, but if it doesn't have his name on it, we're not
Correct.
paying it.
Do we want to leave that to Teresa then to work with Dan and
Yes.
Christie on that?
Because I guarantee you it'll be tracked
Okay.
correctly.
I do too.
Yeah.
And then
Hal?
I receive it from Dan? Is that how you guys want to do it? You're going to send it, I don't pay it unless I receive it?
Or she can confirm it with you, and she'll say, it's been done. However, there'll be some,
Okay, Hal's got a comment here.
So it'll be conversation with Seth and Kim here real quick. So when we started early on, I had contacted structural engineer, mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, okay? Two of those were the original design engineers on the facility when the facility was first built. I was led to believe when we met that first time with MK and they came and started doing their assessment, that they would be doing not only the assessment, but they would also be saying, we're going to be doing like for like. And those consultants then backed off, anticipating that MK was, for all intents and purposes, not only a reviewer, but they were also a design engineer. So that they had ultimate control over not only the costing, but also the design. So if we have a 30,000 BTU boiler, and we knew that that was sufficient, but yet newer technologies were available, et cetera, we were going to be using this boiler, and these are the reasons why. I was led to believe that that was also part of MK. Our consultants backed off completely. We didn't move forward with them. Do we need, meaning the county, because STAR typically would not hire the design consultants. The county would, and STAR would be acting nothing more than a project manager to help with costs and do construction putback, but not design. So help clarify, because I will help clarify that to the commissioners and to Dan, where the roles and responsibilities need to go. And if we need to just look at STAR when we meet with them and say, we would like you to hire these people, and these are the reasons why, they become your consultants, they're part of your payroll at this time on your insurance claims. Anyway, help me understand that so that I can help them understand that, if you would.
Yeah, so I'm going to maybe take a step back and look at this as though this hadn't happened at the county and this wasn't county. Let's say it was somebody completely different. In those situations, when I step into there, most of the times the general contractors are the ones coordinating and arranging for the plans or the drawings or whatever is needed through their own resources. One of some of these subcontractors that Ryan has identified on here. So I think where it gets a little bit of a, I don't want to say confusion, but I think because the county is the county and they operate like they do, that puts a different layer involved in this altogether. So where maybe STAR didn't completely understand, having worked with you guys before, saying, hey, we are responsible for doing that. Maybe on our side, and maybe specifically with me, I had assumed that STAR, that as involvement here, would act just like a normal general contractor would and take care of all of that. So if that's my breakdown, I can apologize for that. But if the one thing to keep in mind too is that after that initial meeting that we all had on site here, there have been a lot of meetings, and there's been a lot of things discussed between that time and where we're at right now too. So
At least 24 to 28.
yeah, and I was going to say I've got I think two meetings backlogged here to type up minutes. So, but that's. I just give that perspective for you too. So if we take the county out of the situation, we would, typically expect the general contractor to take care of all that. With the county involved, that's probably going to have to be a decision you guys make as to whether you want STAR to do that or whether that's something you guys address. And that's, I mean, I won't say it's an easy decision, but it's something once it's decided, it's pretty easy to have them do it or you guys do it, whichever you want to do, that's fine.
And I will add, like, we're talking about the billings. Generally, it goes through Levi, but it goes through Dan to Teresa, and then once they get that approval, they send it to HR, which then makes the claim. So that's usually how that flows.
So, is a design consultant a claim on the policy to pay them?
That's all part of it.
Okay, so my recommendation then, Commission, is that I will give Dan Star's contact number as well as contacts for the original mechanical, electrical engineers. We do have a structural engineer that's under contract that would be able to suffice and take care of anything with soils analysis, compaction testing, put back, etc. In regards to that, we have that component in place. And then we can sit down with Star and instruct them that these are the players, they will be under your contract, get them under contract with the commission, and it will move forward, and we will not have that communication breakdown at this point.
So let's have you two and Levi meet with Star and have this conversation so that everybody that's in this meeting is all on the same page. The key players, you three are key players in my opinion. Let's have all three of you meet with Star, have this conversation, and then move forward from there.
Okay.
I just want to make maybe a little bit more recommendations based upon what I've seen and experienced on this too. If you're talking with Star, just make sure that you guys establish who is their main point of contact, who is the head, who is the lead on here. Kelly has been handling and I think has done a great job getting these guys back up and running. From my perspective anyway, I'm not sure that he's comfortable with the actual putback project, if that makes sense. If he is, I think he just needs to be told that.
So on the costing end, and then once you have those costs and you've given approval, put it back, go. Is that what you're?
Yeah, so
Kelly's apprehensive about that go.
I don't know, but
Okay.
that I get that impression or that gut feeling
We'll have
that
that-
there may be some anxiety on that part. I don't know.
We'll have that conversation and I'll
Kelly's
have
main,
Dan
as I
report back.
understand, his main game is emergency repairs. He
Yeah.
goes into Columbia and these big plants and he does emergency repairs and shutdowns. And so, not speaking for Kelly, but I do feel like this, it might be a little out of his comfort zone, okay, now we're past the emergency, so, and maybe
And-
start.
Well,
to have
if
other
we get
players
this
involved.
contract and get it signed, Brad will be involved with it,
We'll get that.
and it'll be
sorted
down
out.
on paper.
And I'm not sure there was ever a line of demarcation for Kelly. The
I don't think there was.
transition between that temporary
I don't think
to
there
the
was.
That
to
is,
putback.
that is correct.
Yeah.
That is a correct.
And you started off the conversation saying we're here because of a breakdown and whatever. I think for whatever intensive purposes, that line, I just don't think he understood it. I don't think we understood that maybe where his position was and all that too, because I like Kelly and, I think he's done a great job for, like I said, getting these guys back in place. But I think if we identify that person for the putback portion of this, I think it will help the situation immensely.
The role of design consultant in MK, therein lies a breakdown as well.
Yeah.
Without a contract,
We'll get her squared away.
people don't want to work. I mean, they want guaranteed they're going to get paid.
Well,
And so we want to make sure that that happens.
as a comment, to Star's credit, they weren't just going to be there and bill the county doing nothing, not knowing for sure if they had equipment or not, or, so, I mean, at least they weren't looking to milk out whatever they could. They were being fair and honest with us, so.
Yeah, no, I don't doubt that one bit. One thing I would also add to this too is that if you do to get a contract established with them, one thing that we've requested repeatedly on here and really haven't had much success with is periodic regular updates. At a certain point, I was asking for daily and weekly updates, and those were few and far between. Didn't hear a whole lot of that. So if you guys do get something established with Star on there, make sure that they have a good direction on the line of communication that's going to be needed on this one. Because what we're intending to do is look at their overall repair schedule so we know when they're starting, when they're ending, what they plan on doing, all in between on here, and then also if there's any roadblocks that they run into during that repair schedule. And so that's where those weekly updates are going to help out.
Return and
say-
report. It's gotta happen.
Yeah, so that way, if there is a problem that we do run into, or additional damages that we weren't anticipating that now we have to deal with, that we know, oh, okay, we've identified it here, so that's gonna affect the schedule down here. So that communication part will, I think, help out a lot as well. And then as far as these weekly teleconferences that we've been doing, from what I'm hearing anyway, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like Levi is more, I wanna say, you're going to be the optional attendee versus Dan, who might be doing the regular attendee direction lead on all this stuff. And I think what it'd be good to do is have a meeting, probably, if we get on a teleconference, just specifically with you and MKA, just so you have an idea what they're looking for in terms of documentation from STAR for what they've already done, and then for what is already needed. We've gotten a few pieces here and there, but there's still a lot of holes to fill. And if we can do that, I think that'll help direct us where we need to go.
I think another important thing that we've requested several times is we need breakdowns of the specifics for the project. So especially the water. I need everything broken down that has to do with replacement of the water line. Because that's where we're dealing with coverage, what we've been waiting for, which has already been replaced, it's already been done.
Correct.
And I have no idea what was entailed, what it cost. I have zero information on it. So we were kept being told that we were gonna get, yeah, we can do it, we can separate this out with the equipment, with the temporary, with the replacement, and we have absolutely nothing. So as far as there being, I think we've made it pretty clear what we've needed to the contractor. So I don't think, there might have been miscommunication in the beginning, but I disagree with the fact that they have not been told specifically what we need.
Right now, we don't have a contractor. We don't have a contract, so.
Yeah,
And we gotta go back to that point and start from there.
Right.
And just so you know too, with what Kim's speaking about, we have these meeting minutes that we keep track of every time pretty much we get together on here, but we also have letters that go out from MKA, what we refer to as requests for information. Sometimes we abbreviate stuff, acronym used called RFI, so request for information. And so we've repeatedly done that over probably the past 4 months, I think, on multiple occasions that pretty much list out what is needed from them. So I can probably distribute that as well as these meeting minutes for everybody that's here too, so.
Do you receive any information back
Well,
on your RFI requests?
We receive responses and communications that we're going to get it, but if we do get something that's maybe not either complete or with everything that we're actually looking for, the guy that is actually preparing those letters requesting that information, I worked with him before, and at several points here in the past couple of teleconferences he said, I don't care how you get it to me, you can send me a shoebox full of whatever, just give it to me. I'll work through it. Let me dig through it. And it's been multiple times that we've requested that.
We'll go up the ladder on STAR.
We'll get it taken care of. We'll get it taken care of.
Yes.
I was,
And again, I don't mean to harp on anyone in particular on STAR. It's just, I mean, we've got to have certain pieces of information to get this process, so.
All right,
Do we want to set a monthly commission meeting for updates on that?
that'll be in the contract.
Okay.
We're gonna be informed. We have a monthly
Okay.
meeting with Dan right now,
Perfect.
so. Questions, concerns,
I don't think
we
so.
need to answer?
Unless you guys have any for us?
I might just give a quick update for kind of where we're at, and you can back me up about kind of how things have processed and played out. So initially, and this is probably more for your benefit, Dan, to bring you up to speed on everything.
Yeah.
But when this originally happened back in August, we had the need to, number one, get the line back in service to be able to get the water reestablished back to the detention center. With that being the case, there were a lot of things that had to be done and set up. So we did this temporary equipment, and we really pushed heavily at the very, very beginning because of the colder weather. that was going to be up. So that's where this temporary structure on the backside of the property comes into play. And so that was all coordinated and done by Star. Ran into a few hiccups here or there, but they eventually got it done and put into place so they could get back up into operation. In the immediate time frame, we were also working to try and figure out what the situation is below grade for what needed to be done in terms of the soil stabilization, shoring of walls. We've got one wall in between be the mechanical room and then the generator electrical room. I think that's how we've been referring to it. But that wall right there, they found that we really needed to support that. And I think initially there was some basically some polyurethane injection foam that was put in there to keep it in place. But I think they've determined that, hey, you know, we're probably going to have to do a whole lot more about that. So in that process, we've been evaluating the equipment. Once the temporary stuff got set up and running and bypassed and everything, but we've been evaluating the equipment. We've also been looking at the slab itself, the soil conditions below, and then also the equipment that's subgraded on there, as well as the cooling tower. We didn't anticipate that was going to be initially involved, but that's one of the things that's been added to the group of damages on here too. So that's where that evolving scope has kind of broadened itself out here too. So from what I understand, we have removed all of in the pictures that I've seen, we removed most of the slab in the mechanical room area. They have, I think, continued doing some of that reinforcing over underneath the generator room. Is that where we're at right now?
I don't know if they've got that shored up. They dug down to remove this much pipe to try to get to MKA, but I don't know that they've
All
actually,
further inspection. Yeah.
I don't know that they've actually got it shored up further than what it was.
Okay. And that's kind of a scenario that gets us from here to there and what's transpired, and that's a real brief summary of how everything has shaken down on here. So at this point, the next part of the process is to get the soil situation figured out, and you got information, I think it was right before Christmas, if I remember right, in a week or two, over to MKA on the original soils that were in place there so they could look at and analyze it. So MKA's been going through that data to be able to determine, okay, what do we need to backfill, how do we need to support, what do we need to do to put this back in place. And they've also been looking to see if that's extended back into the, I guess you would say, the east hallway area there that's adjacent to the mechanical room, getting that figured out so that if we do repairs, that we don't have issues in the future if we can't see back behind these other areas on here too. Right now, the biggest pressing things, just so you know, Dan, here is the lead time on that equipment. And we've had discussions and talk about the replacement equipment for like kind and quality. And I think we've even talked about, you know, hey, if we wanted to do, you know, upgrade, how does that work? And for the insurance part of it, and Kim can smack me around if she wants to afterwards, but the equipment's going to be based upon what you had is what you get kind of a thing. And then if you take that, you can take that money and apply that to, you know, if they decide that they wanted to upgrade the system to do a bigger capacity or whatever, that's something that you guys decide all together. So we're kind of in that process, but the lead time on that is probably the most critical thing, because we're in January right now. And depending on how that lead time works, we're going to be up against March and April, and that's going to be, and we've kind of pressed that from probably the past 2 months, I think, really saying, hey, we got to have this stuff so we know what we're doing here. So that's kind of a synopsis of where it's sitting right now, if that helps you out.
Yeah, thank you.
But just in what you just said there, I can see where part of the confusion is, because you're saying that MKA's looking at this to make decisions, but if we're going to get engineers and stuff to make those decisions, then who is making the decisions? So I can see that there's been a hole, and we'll get that taken care of. Anybody else?
Well, I just yesterday got an email from Kelly, and so did Hallie, directed it to the two of us, about some fill. And I just think, I haven't responded yet because I was waiting for this meeting, but again, this should be a question probably now directed to Dan.
Yes.
And I just think there's probably going to be like 100 little decisions, right? Of things like this, that are we going to be peppering Dan with little things like every day on this? Or is there a place where we're gonna just say, hey, if it's within this scope, you guys go? You know,
We're gonna go to Dan. We're gonna go to Dan right now. That's,
Until there's a contract in place,
yeah,
the replacement.
I really think that, and I don't want to make meetings to have meetings, I hate that, but I think really getting together with the progress or process that MKA has been through on here will probably provide you a lot of insight into where you head from here so that you can get what needs to happen for the county done. So if, we can set that up, and I know the MKA guys will be more than happy to, help clarify. They were brought on to help analyze cost and scope and everything like that in regards to it, but the execution part would still fall back to whatever general contractor is doing it, so.
that's what I say. I can see where there's been some confusion. And that's what this meeting's about. All right, Dan.
Wish me luck.
All right. No other comments? We're adjourned.
Just,
Oh.
do we know, is this entire project covered by insurance, or do we know what is and what isn't? Just for point of clarification?
We don't, because I don't have it. I can give you.
don't have a scope.
General, I don't have any information.
Okay.
Yeah, I can tell you that the underground water
The water line
pipe is not
is not.
covered.
Okay.
I can't tell you how much that is, or
Right.
to what extent, because I have to have it detailed out to say, yeah, we'll cover this portion of it and not this portion of it.
We'll get it to you then.
And to add to that,
Christie keeps sending you messages.
She did that one,
yeah.
and to add to that, it gets a little
How
bit
could I tell?
Yeah.
tricky with what she's saying right here, because there wasn't a quote, I'm gonna say quote for quote exchange of, okay, pipe bust, pipe fails, we replace the pipe, everything's back in order. We had to bypass the system to the temporary to get out to the main on here. So there's kind of like a commingling that's going on right now that probably would be addressed under the temporary cost to get the operations back up and running, but a portion of that's gonna fall back somehow. We just don't have the information to say, yes, this $10,000 is covered and this 5,000 is not. We just don't have that information to be able to do that right now. And we'll look at all of the costs that are coming in and then review them with Kim to see exactly how that shakes out in the actual policy breakdown too, so.
But I would like that as much as you would.
I bet you would,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, we're gonna get there.
Okay.